All right. Thank you, Paula, for the great introduction. And I can't help to also briefly comment on the previous panel on supply chain security. We were all very proud of being part of the White House session a couple of weeks ago, and this also shows the importance of open source, of course. But first off, congrats, Brian, for taking the new role of leading the OpenSSF. Red Hat is a founder of this important initiative, and we look forward to working with stakeholders and communities as it identifies priorities and projects. Second, we are absolutely committed to helping policymakers on both sides of the pond understand that the discussion of software supply chain security is one of involving all software, regardless of the development model. Without focus on open and transparent software management over the lifecycle of a software product, whether open source or proprietary, little progress will be made. It's a great pleasure to be with all of you today on the Open Forum Europe's Policy Summit. And it's such a pity that we all have to run it virtual again today, as well as on tomorrow's sessions. Indeed, thousands of open source developers and members of the wider community would have otherwise traveled to Brussels. In normal times, that would also include around 50 Red Hat volunteers rushing around the campus, helping presenting numerous tracks, chairing the community dev room, staffing project booth, and answering questions about free software technology, and catching up with friends whilst waiting in the food truck lines. Okay, I need to operate here. My speech today will touch on a few areas that Red Hat considers important to open source growth across Europe and beyond. First, the need to continue and drive awareness with data, statistics, and proof points that open source provides a real alternative to proprietary lock-in. Next, the important role of public policy and political leadership and how to move the next chapter of open source growth story. Thirdly, recognizing pioneering member states who convert policy into action, open source adoption and co-invention. Fourthly, sharing some insights and some trends and investments. And finally, closing with a reflection on just how crucial open source is to reopening the region post-COVID and driving growth and global competitiveness. Despite the past successes, there's still obviously more to do when it comes to helping co-develop European awareness. And supporting policy from open source and its vital role to unlock Europe's full potential, especially as the world's largest trading bloc. At this time, EU recovery and investments, it is so important to recognize the economics of open source. As the EU Open Source Impact Study found, and it has been mentioned already earlier today, that every 10% increase in contribution generates 0.4 to 0.6 GDP points. This is, moreover, open source provides 65 to 95 billion euro economic contribution to the European economy. Red Hat, as trusted global brand, is often referenced as a proof point of the success of enterprise-grade open source, providing mission-critical foundation across several European verticals. We are still largely the same Red Hat of 30 plus years ago. 100% open source, 100% upstream first. The portfolio of products has grown significantly, as has our role shift from a technology provider to a strategic partner as we solve and co-invent together with all of you. The fact that our largest global R&D footprint is based here in Europe and our direct presence in 25 European cities speaks volumes about the vast amount of open source expertise here in Europe. As we heard this morning from Commissioner Hahn, open source is mission critical. 75% of all hosts run Linux, and EU leverages open source to realize its geopolitical goals. Similarly, I'm really looking forward to hearing from the next speaker, Minister de Mochelan, about this topic. Indeed, France is another European pioneer in facilitating and encouraging open source adoption, championing a default to open public policy, to facilitating and encouraging adoption and tackling proprietary lock-in. As the European Union's open source study also found, France is at the avant-garde of investing in open source to accelerate digital transformation. At Red Hat, we have seen this for ourselves with terrific collaboration, as mentioned earlier, across multiple critical infrastructures. I'd like to share some impressive examples of open source in the French government. For instance, OpenShift deployment in Regalian, which is the Defense Policy and Justice Ministries, as well as healthcare, not to mention our recent announcement with MGN to improve in-house skills. An internal integration for faster, more efficient deployment and development of cloud-native application on its new platform as a service. Now, we certainly look forward in 2022 to working yet more closely with France and other pioneering governments who share the same vision of realizing European digital sovereignty to drive more openness, control, fairness, and transparency. Red Hat stands ready to share its experience and know-how on how to innovate with open source to help realize this. Let's now turn to some other drivers in 2022. Open source continues to be a critical innovation engine. The technologies that are changing how we work and do business, cloud computing, edge, enterprise Linux, containers, AI, and machine learning, were all born in open source. In 2022, Red Hat will invest in several areas to help customers achieve a modern IT stack built on interconnected open source technologies, such as edge computing, artificial intelligence and machine learning, IT automation and management, as well as lowering the barriers of entry in order to embrace the hybrid cloud. We see organizations looking for solutions that meet their existing deployment needs and that don't require them to adjust their operations and to use new technologies. As technology needs span far outside the traditional realms of the private data center and public cloud, consistency is now more important than ever to the success of organizations. In building for success, collaboration across organizations and across boundaries becomes vital. Our recent Red Hat 2022 Global Customer Outlook report shows that customers continue to double down on digital transformation efforts. And this comes with a little surprise, I believe. Frequently, we see the realities of today's business environments requiring a balancing act between the speed, efficiency, and scale of cloud-native technologies, with the control of a granular security features of on-premise infrastructures. The decisions an organization makes today can and will persist for the next decade at least. It is with this view that we must understand that collaboration across organizations and across EU member states is key to success. So I would like to close on a note of gratitude to you all attending this Open Source Policy Summit as well as tomorrow's meetings. The wind is very much in the sail of open source. As we continue to work together and collaborate across Europe and beyond, we are not only expanding open source share of the pie, and well as political mindshare, but more importantly, fixing real problems to no single company or government can do alone. The response to COVID provides a stark reminder of the power of open. I wanted to thank the many of you in the audience and beyond who did and continue to do their part to fight the pandemic using their open source skills and demonstrate the resilience and spirit across government customers, partners, and key sectors, notably the healthcare industry. I found all the stories covered in the recent EU Open Source Observatory report not only impressive technologically, but moving societally. We will look back at this year as yet another chapter in open source history where it helped save lives in an efficient, secure, and scalable fashion. So as I turn it to Minister de Monchelin to hand over the baton, I think it's fair to say that there has never been a more important time to embrace open source technology and its collaborative problem-solving spirit to ensure that we, Europeans, recover quickly and that we wisely invest EU recovery funds and current budgets into future-proof solutions for Europe and her digital sovereignty. Thank you very much for having me today.